Chosen one, stop what you're doing. Not later. Right now. Because some nights, God moves differently. Tonight is one of those nights. I don't know how you found this message. Maybe you stumbled across it at midnight when sleep wouldn't come. Maybe someone you barely talk to anymore sent it to you and didn't know why. Maybe you've watched 100 videos just like this one, hoping something would finally reach the place inside you that's been locked shut for years. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you before this is over. You didn't find this message. This message found you. And here is the shocking truth. Nobody says out loud the people who kept you small, who needed your confusion, who fed off your silence and your sacrifice. They can already feel that something is shifting in you. They felt it before you did. That's why your phone has been different lately. That's why certain rooms feel different when you walk in. They are afraid, not of who you were. They are afraid of who God is turning you into right now. Tonight, heaven is drawing a line in the sand between the life you've been forced to carry and the life you were actually born for. This is not another sermon. This is not comfort. This is a summons. God is not simply saying, I see you. He is saying, come out. Because what felt like abandonment was often God loosening your grip on what could never carry your future. Before this message is over, you are going to understand exactly why the people who needed your weakness are suddenly afraid of your next season. Stay with me. 3 revelations are coming. Why the separation had to happen, why your pain was not wasted, and what your new beginning tonight will actually require from you. If your spirit knows tonight is different type right now, I will not miss my moment. Let me ask you something nobody else has dared to ask you. When did you stop recognizing yourself? Not your face in the mirror, not your name on the mailbox, but you, the real you, the one who used to believe that something greater was still coming. When did that person start feeling like a stranger? Because I see you. And what I see is not someone who fell apart. What I see is someone who outgrew a life that was never big enough for them to begin with. There is a moment, and chosen ones know exactly what I'm talking about, when everything that used to feel comfortable starts feeling like a prison. The same conversations feel hollow. The same rooms feel smaller. The same relationships feel like they're pulling you underwater instead of lifting you up. And you told yourself you were ungrateful. You told yourself you were being difficult. You told yourself to just be thankful. But what if I told you that restlessness was not a warning sign? It was a holy signal. Scripture tells us in Genesis 12 that God came to Abraham and said 3 words that changed the history of humanity. Get up, go. He didn't give Abraham a map. He didn't explain the destination. He simply made Abraham's current address feel impossible to stay in. And Abraham, a man of 75 years old, packed everything he had ever known and walked into the unknown. You know why Abraham could leave? Because God first made staying unbearable. That is how heaven works, chosen one. God does not always call you to something first. Sometimes he makes you uncomfortable where you are first. He lets the old shoes squeeze your feet until you cannot take another step. He lets the wallpaper peel in the house you were never meant to die in. He lets the nest feel so tight, so suffocating, until the bird finally opens its wings, not out of confidence but out of desperation. And desperation in the hands of God becomes direction. Think about Israel in Egypt. 400 years. 400 years. And they stayed. They endured the beatings, the forced labor, the abuse, because Egypt was familiar. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. That is one of the most dangerous lies the enemy ever planted in the human heart. But God listened to me. God did not send Moses until Egypt became unbearable. Exodus 2:23 says the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out. God heard that cry, and he did not send comfort. He sent a way out. Your groaning is not weakness. Your groaning is God's cue. Think about Elijah, a prophet so powerful he called fire down from heaven, collapsed under a juniper tree in the wilderness, telling God, I've had enough. Burned out, bone-tired, done. And what did God do? He didn't rebuke him, he let him rest. Then he said, the journey is too great for you, and he sent him not backward, but forward to the next assignment. Your exhaustion is not the end. It is God saying, the journey ahead requires more than the version of you that got here. And Esther, a young woman hidden in a palace, terrified, unsure, until Mordecai spoke those 10 words that rewired her destiny. Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? She was uncomfortable for a reason. She was positioned, not punished. So were you. Every time you tried to keep the peace, and it cost you your truth. Every time you played small so someone else could feel big. Every time you swallowed your gift to protect someone else's ego. You thought you were being loyal. And you were. But heaven was watching the price you were paying, and heaven decided this is too expensive. Peace at the cost of destiny is a trade God never asked you to make. Because here is what I know about you, and this is going to land somewhere deep if you let it. You did not become disconnected from your old life because you failed it. You became disconnected from it because you finished it. The lesson was complete, the season was done. And the discomfort you felt, that ache in your chest, that sense that something has been pulling at you like a tide, that was not depression. That was migration season. Every autumn, birds feel it, this ancient ache in their bones, before they even understand why. They grow restless, they stop eating, they pace the branches. They don't know where they're going. They only know they cannot stay. That is you right now. The old life did not become uncomfortable by accident. God made captivity feel tight because freedom was near. And in a few minutes, I'm going to tell you the hidden reasons some people panic the very moment you stop playing the role they assigned to you. Because it's not about you at all. It never was. If you've been feeling restless, heavy, and like something inside you has been saying this cannot be it type right now, God is moving me. Because where we're going next will change how you see every relationship that tried to hold you back. You made it through the first revelation. And I need you to stay right here, because what I'm about to say next is the part most preachers are afraid to tell you. Not because it isn't true, but because it hits too close to home for too many people sitting in too many pews. Here it is. Some of the people who said they loved you never actually loved you. They loved what you did for them. They loved that you answered the phone at 2 inches the morning. They loved that you never said no. They loved that you swallowed your tears so they wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. They loved that you kept the peace, kept the family together, kept showing up, even when showing up was slowly killing something inside of you. They loved your function. And the moment you started healing, the moment you started becoming something they couldn't manage, they called it a problem. They called it selfish. They called it rebellion. Some of them even had the audacity to call it sin. Let me ask you something nobody has ever asked you directly. When was the last time someone in your family called to ask how you were doing, not to vent, not to borrow, not to pull you into somebody else's drama, but just to ask, are you okay? Take a moment with that, because some of you just realized the answer is you cannot remember. The Bible tells us in Exodus, chapter after chapter, that Pharaoh kept calling Moses back. Every time a plague hit, every time the pressure got unbearable, Pharaoh would soften just enough to make a promise. Okay, go, but don't go too far. And the moment the pressure lifted, he hardened his heart again. That is not ancient history. That is your family reunion. That is your inbox right now. Toxic systems do not let go easily. They negotiate, they guilt, they perform sudden sickness, they manufacture emergencies. They send the relative you actually do love as a messenger, knowing you'll lower your guard for them. That is called emotional triangulation, and it is as old as the enemy himself. You have been the bridge everybody crossed but nobody repaired. You have been the well everybody drew from but nobody refilled. You have played the same role on the same old stage for so long that some people in your life genuinely cannot picture you in any other part. And when you dared to step off that stage, when you dared to say, "I am more than this role," they looked at you like you had betrayed them. And here is the grief I need you to sit with for just a moment. It hurts. It deeply hurts when the people you loved most only knew how to relate to your sacrifice. It hurts when your healing looks like abandonment to people who needed your wounds to feel better about their own. It hurts when your boundaries are called cruelty, when your self-respect is called pride, when your obedience to God is called changing. You have been told your whole life that love means giving without limit. But chosen one, that is not love. That is exploitation, dressed in the language of family loyalty. Jesus said in John 10:10, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy." And sometimes the thief doesn't look like a stranger. Sometimes the thief has your last name. Sometimes the thief sat across from you at Thanksgiving dinner for 40 years. Pharaoh did not want Israel to be free. He wanted Israel to be productive. There is a difference, and some people in your life do not want your freedom. They want your anointing, your strength, your wisdom, your calm in a crisis, without ever honoring your humanity, without ever asking what it cost you to keep giving. And when the chosen one begins to heal, when you stop absorbing everybody else's chaos, the system shakes. Not because you did something wrong, because the system was built on your silence. The resistance you felt was not always proof you were wrong. Sometimes it was proof that your freedom threatened the system built on your silence. If God is opening your eyes tonight, type right now, "No more chains disguised as love." Because here is what's coming next, and you cannot afford to miss it. You may be sitting there right now with one burning question that nobody has answered. If God loved me, if He truly saw all of this, why did He allow it to go on so long? Why would He allow this separation if He knew how much it was going to hurt? That answer is coming, and it will change the way you see every single painful year of your life. Stay with me. You felt it, didn't you? That line being drawn tonight between who you were forced to become and who God is calling you to be. But before you step across it, there is something you need to hear. Something most preachers are too afraid to say out loud, because this truth is not comfortable, it is not gentle, and it will cost you the story you've been telling yourself for years. God allowed the breaking. He did not cause it. He did not delight in it, but He allowed it, and He did it on purpose. I need you to sit with that for a moment, because somewhere deep inside, you've been carrying a quiet accusation against heaven. If God loved me, really loved me, He would have stopped it. The marriage that fell apart, the family that turned its back, the friendship that went cold without explanation, the career that crumbled after you gave it everything, the version of yourself you spent decades building that God let it all break. And you called it abandonment. But what if it was rescue? Hear me now, some losses are not punishments. Some losses are evacuations. God did not remove those things to hurt you. He removed them because He could see what you could not, that what you were clinging to was quietly destroying you. Not all at once, slowly, season by season, like a house with carbon monoxide in the walls. Everything looks fine, everything feels normal, until one day you can't breathe anymore. God smelled the poison before you did, and He opened the door. Think about the children of Israel. 400 years in Egypt, 400 years of chains, forced labor, backs bent under the whip of Pharaoh's system. But listen, Egypt was familiar. They knew the routine. They knew which taskmasters were slightly less cruel. They had adapted to captivity until captivity almost felt like home. And when Moses showed up and said, "God has seen your affliction, it is time to go," do you know what happened? They were terrified. Not of Egypt, of leaving Egypt. Because freedom, when you've been enslaved long enough, feels more dangerous than the chains. That is your story too, dear one. You stayed. Long after the warmth was gone, long after the joy was gone, You stayed because the familiar, even when it was killing you, felt safer than the unknown. You kept pouring yourself into people who never poured back. You kept shrinking yourself to fit into rooms that were never built for who God made you to be. You kept begging to be understood by people whose purpose was to misunderstand you. And God watched. And he waited until the day he decided, no more. Elijah understood this. After the greatest spiritual victory of his life, fire falling from heaven on Mount Carmel, he collapsed under a juniper tree in the wilderness, begging God to let him die. Exhausted, broken, alone. And what did God do? He did not preach at him. He did not rebuke him. He sent an angel with bread and water and said, "The journey is too great for you." God did not despise Elijah's collapse. He fed him in it. And then he led him deeper into the wilderness, not to punish him, but to speak to him in a still, small voice that could only be heard when everything else had gone quiet. That is exactly what your breaking was. God was not silent during your darkest nights. He was clearing the noise so you could finally hear what he had been trying to tell you for years. The prophet Hosea records God saying, "I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her." Not "I will punish her in the wilderness." Speak tenderly. The wilderness was never the sentence. It was the sanctuary. And Isaiah 43 burned into the heart of every chosen one who has ever felt their past was too heavy to leave behind. God says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Do you not perceive it? Your grief is real. I am not rushing past it. Mourn the marriage. Mourn the friendship. Mourn the version of yourself that kept begging to be chosen by people who had already decided to leave. That person deserves to be mourned. She was faithful. He was loyal. They gave everything they had to rooms that never deserved them. But grief is not always a sign you chose wrong. Sometimes grief is the price of crossing over. When a bone is reset, after years of healing crooked, it hurts more than the original break. The doctor has to refracture what healed wrong before it can heal right. That pain is not cruelty. That is precision. That is a surgeon who loves you too much to leave you permanently bent. God did not break you to destroy you. He allowed the breaking so the false version of your life could no longer imprison the real one. The field has been cleared. The infection has been cut away. The bone is being set. And something is being planted in you tonight that could never have taken root in the soil of who you used to be. Don't click away now, because the next part is where many of you will finally understand why this new beginning had to start with a wilderness. You made it through the first revelation. And I need you to stay right here, because what comes next is the part most people never hear. The part that explains why the separation had to happen the way it did. Not just spiritually, personally. In your own kitchen, in your own bedroom, in your own chest at 3 inches the morning when the house was silent and you were asking God if any of it was worth it. Here is the truth that is going to set something free in you tonight. You didn't just leave a toxic relationship. You didn't just distance yourself from difficult people. You walked out of a system, a carefully constructed world where your pain kept other people comfortable, where your silence kept the peace, where your sacrifice kept the family portrait hanging straight on the wall. And the moment you stepped out of that system, the wilderness began. Now let me ask you something that nobody has ever asked you directly. When was the last time you introduced yourself by who you actually are, instead of who somebody needed you to be? Think about that. Because for years, some of you, for decades, your identity was handed to you by people who needed you small. They called you the strong one, the reliable one, the one who holds everything together. And you wore it. You wore it so long it started to feel like skin. But it was never your skin. It was their costume. Galatians 4:7 declares, "You are no longer a slave, but a child of God." Not a support system, not an emotional ATM, not a scapegoat, a child, an heir, someone who carries royal blood in a wounded body. The wilderness is where God tears the costume off. And yes, it hurts. Because when something has been pressed against you long enough, removing it feels like loss. The children of Israel walked out of Egypt, and within 3 days, they were crying to go back. Not because Egypt was good, because Egypt was familiar. They had learned how to survive there. They knew the guards, they knew the schedule, they knew which beatings to expect. Chosen one, familiar suffering is still suffering. The wilderness felt empty, but it wasn't empty. God was in it. The cloud by day, the fire by night, and every single morning fresh manna on the ground, not yesterday's manna. New manna, because God was teaching them something revolutionary. You cannot carry yesterday's provision into tomorrow's assignment. That is exactly what is happening to you right now. You have been trying to carry yesterday's identity into a season that requires a new name. And God, in His mercy, stripped everything down to nothing, not to destroy you, but to reintroduce you. Not to who you were forced to become, but to who He decided you were before the world got its hands on you. Revelation 2:17 says, He gives the overcomer a white stone with a new name written on it, a name known only to the one who receives it. That means the person who hurt you doesn't know your new name. The family that overlooked you cannot pronounce your new name. The system that used you has no access to your new name. Only you and God. And that name is not the rejected one. It is not the overlooked one. It is not the one who survived the family. Your new name is chosen, preserved, prepared. Now hear me clearly, and I am speaking directly to those of you who are in your 60s, your 70s, even your 80s, who have been sitting with this quiet, devastating fear that it is simply too late. Let me shatter that lie right now. God is not intimidated by how late it feels to you. Moses was 80 years old, standing barefoot at a burning bush, receiving the greatest assignment of human history. Abraham was 100 when the promise was born. Anna prayed in the temple for decades, and God saved the greatest moment of her life for last. She saw the Messiah with her own eyes. A late beginning in human time is not a late beginning in divine time. You are not leaving this season empty. You are leaving differently, stripped of false identity, carrying a new name, walking in earned wisdom that no 20-year-old can manufacture and no enemy can take. The fog is lifting. The old skin is falling away. You are stepping out into the crispest morning air you have breathed in years, and the passport in your hand has been stamped for a country you have never visited but your soul already knows. But here is the part most people miss entirely. A new beginning does not start when the door opens. It starts when you stop negotiating with what God already told you to leave. The wilderness was not where your life stopped. It was where your false self started dying. And everything that dies in God's hands gets resurrected for God's purpose. If this is your season to finally discover who you are in Him, type right now, I am leaving survival mode. Because the next revelation will show you exactly what your new beginning is going to cost and why every single penny of that price is worth it. Let me ask you something. Nobody in your life has had the courage to ask you. You've been praying for a new season. You've been asking God to open new doors, send new relationships, build a new life. And yet, late at night, when nobody is watching, you keep going back to the old text threads, back to the old conversations, back to the people who called you crazy for believing you deserved more. You pray for the promised land in the morning, and you redecorate Egypt at night. That is the crisis. And God is looking you directly in the face right now and saying, enough. Here's what nobody preaches on Sunday morning. Delayed obedience, when God has already spoken clearly, is still disobedience. You heard Him. You felt Him move in your spirit. You knew in your bones what He was asking you to release. But you said, not yet. Let me just check one more time. Let me just make sure. And while you were checking, you missed 3 open doors. Genesis 19. Lot's wife. God said one word. Go. Don't look back. Don't pause. Don't negotiate. Just go. But she looked back, and she became a monument to hesitation, a pillar of salt, frozen in the exact moment she chose the familiar over the future. Are you standing in that same moment right now? Because I need you to hear this: old doors become more attractive right before new doors open. That is not coincidence. That is the enemy's oldest strategy. The moment heaven accelerates toward you, hell manufactures an emergency behind you. A sudden phone call, an unexpected apology with no actual change behind it. A wave of guilt that whispers, "How could you just walk away?" Sentimentality, false guilt, manufactured crises, sudden apologies without transformation. These are not signs from God. These are the enemy's final plays before your breakthrough. John 11:44. When Lazarus walked out of that tomb, Jesus didn't say, "Celebrate." He said, "Loose him and let him go." Because Lazarus was alive, but he was still wearing death's clothes. He was resurrected, but not yet released. And some of you are exactly there tonight. God has already raised something new inside of you, but you are still wearing the grave clothes of who you used to be, still wrapped in the identity they assigned you, still dragging old roles, old wounds, old obligations that God already declared expired. You cannot walk free in burial clothes. And here is where I need to press deeper, because this is where most people stop listening. The issue is not confusion anymore. You are not confused. You know exactly what God has been telling you. The issue is not a lack of signs. God has given you more signs than he gave Moses. The issue, the real issue, is this: do you trust God more than you fear being alone? Because new beginnings cost something. Abraham burned his bridges. He didn't send a postcard back to Ur saying, "I'll be back if Canaan doesn't work out." He left and didn't look back. Joshua's army crossed the Jordan and the waters returned behind them. There was no going back. Cortez burned the boats on the shore, so his men understood this is not a trial run. This is the decision. God is calling you to burn the boats tonight. You cannot carry Egypt in your heart and expect to live free in the promised land. Say that again to yourself. Let it cut where it needs to cut, because the weight you've been feeling, that heaviness, that exhaustion, that sense that something is wrong but you can't name it, that is the weight of a future you keep refusing to fully enter. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And God cannot move a divided heart into a whole inheritance. Isaiah 43:18, 1:9. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. The word new in Hebrew, kadash, means something that has never existed before. God is not offering you a renovated version of what you had. He is offering you something entirely new. But you cannot receive it with hands still full of what he already told you to put down. If God has been telling you to stop going back, type right now, "I release the old tonight," and share this with someone standing at a decision they've been afraid to make. You might be the voice that gives them permission to finally step forward, because in the next section I am going to show you what God is actually building on the other side of this release. And I promise you it is bigger, wider, and more glorious than anything your fear has allowed you to imagine. Don't you dare leave now, because what's coming next will change everything. I need you to hear this next part very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is not theology. It's not poetry. It is a direct word for the season you are standing in right now. God did not remove you from those relationships simply to give you peace and quiet. He did not strip away those old connections just so you could sit alone in a clean room. He removed you because he is repositioning you. There is a difference between being set aside and being set up. And chosen one, you have been set up. Here is what nobody tells you about painful separation. We assume that when something is taken from us, we are being punished. We count what we lost. We replay the rejection. We measure our worth by what walked away. But Psalm 23 doesn't say, "He abandoned me in the valley." It says, "He leadeth me beside the still waters." He leads. That means he knows exactly where he's taking you. Let me ask you something that might sting just a little. What if the people you're grieving right now, the ones who left, the ones who dismissed you, the ones who only showed up when they needed something, what if they were never actually your people? What if they were the assignment before the assignment, the training ground before the real territory? Because God does not waste repositioning. Every Esther had a preparation season nobody saw. Every Joseph had a pit before a palace. Every David had a wilderness before a throne. And the preparation was never the punishment. The preparation was the promotion in disguise. This is the word that hits differently when you're over 60, over 70, sitting in a house that feels both quieter and heavier than it used to. You wonder if the best connections of your life are behind you. You wonder if it's too late to find people who actually see you, not the role you played, not the sacrifice you made, not the need you filled, but you. Let me destroy that lie right now. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor." God wrote that into Scripture because he knew you would need it in this exact moment. He is not done connecting you. He is not closing the chapter on meaningful relationship. He is clearing the table so he can set a new one. And this new table, chosen one, this is the table you have never sat at before. This is a table where people don't need you broken in order to feel comfortable. A table where your wisdom is welcomed instead of feared. A table where your boundaries are respected instead of weaponized against you. A table where you are not the emotional caretaker, you are the honored guest. Some of you have spent 40, 50 years feeding everyone else at every table you ever sat at. You cooked the meal, set the plates, cleaned up afterward, and somehow still went to bed hungry. God is not inviting you to another table like that. He is inviting you to sit down, to receive, to be poured into for once in your life. But here is where it gets weighty, and I need you to lean in. This new beginning is not just about your comfort. It is not just about your healing. Some of you are being repositioned because your next season carries generational significance. There are grandchildren watching you right now who need to see what it looks like when a person chooses dignity over dysfunction. There are younger believers in your circle who are waiting for someone with your experience, your scars, your proven faith, to show them that you can survive betrayal and still bloom. You are not just leaving for yourself. You are breaking a cycle for everyone who comes after you. Esther didn't step into the king's court just for Esther. She stepped in for a people. And the courage it took her to walk through that door, that same courage is inside of you right now. Esther 4:14 says it plainly. Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Such a time as this. Not 10 years ago, not when you were 35 and full of fire. Now, in this season, with these scars, with this gray hair, with this hard-won wisdom. Now, your life is not closing down, dear one. Your life may be finally opening up. God still has rooms to bring you into. He still has words to put in your mouth. He still has people to connect you with who will feel like home in ways you have never known home before. He still has a mantle with your name on it, and it is being placed on your shoulders in this very season. The people you are leaving are not the full story of your life. God still has a table you haven't sat at yet. If you believe that if something deep in your spirit is rising right now, type these words: my table is being prepared. Because what God is building in your next chapter requires something from you that we haven't talked about yet. And that is exactly where we are going next. You felt it in the first section. That pull, that recognition. Now I need to take you somewhere deeper, because feeling it is not enough. Tonight requires more than emotion. Tonight requires a decision that happens inside you before the sun comes up, before the phone rings, before the world starts demanding things from you again. Let me ask you something that nobody in your family has ever had the courage to ask you. How long have you been holding a door open for people who walked out on you years ago? How many mornings have you woken up carrying somebody else's chaos as if it were your God-given responsibility? How many nights have you stayed silent about your own pain because you were too busy being strong for everyone else? Here is the brutal, biblical truth, and I need you to receive this like medicine, not like judgment. The children of Israel stood at the edge of the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army closing in behind them. And Moses didn't say, "Let's go back and talk it through." God said, "Move forward." Exodus 14:15. Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to move. God wasn't being cold. God was being clear. There are people in your life right now who are playing Pharaoh. They are not chasing you because they love you. They are chasing you because they cannot survive without your sacrifice. And every time you turn around to explain yourself, to justify your healing, to apologize for your boundaries, you are walking back into Egypt. Not tonight. Tonight, you put blood on the doorpost of your mind. Tonight, you tell the spirit of false obligation it has no authority over this house anymore. Now I want you to listen to these 5 lies. And I want you to recognize yourself in at least one of them, because one of them has been running your life for decades. I must stay close to be loved. My role is to rescue everyone around me. It is selfish to protect my peace. I am too old to begin again. I need everyone's understanding before I can obey God. Chosen one, those are not convictions. Those are chains. And they were forged in years of being mistreated by people who taught you that your worth was measured by how much you could give until there was nothing left. Romans 8:1 says, "There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." No condemnation. That means the guilt that wakes you up at 3 inches the morning. The guilt that says you are abandoning your family, that you are being selfish, that you will regret this. That guilt does not come from God. It comes from a system that only ever worked because you were willing to bleed quietly. And God is done watching you bleed. Here is what tonight looks like in practical terms. 5 internal actions, not suggestions, crossings. You release what God has already exposed. You stop pretending you don't know what you know. You refuse out loud, in your spirit, the lie that it is too late. Caleb was 85 years old and still claiming his mountain. Joshua 14:12, "Give me this hill country." Your age is not your expiration date. It is your qualification. You renounce every false obligation that was never yours to carry. Say it right now. I am not responsible for the consequences of other people's choices. You receive a new identity, not the identity your family assigned you, not the role the dysfunction needed you to play. The name God wrote for you before your mother knew your face, and you agree with God's future out loud, because a new beginning does not start when circumstances change. A new beginning starts when agreement changes. That is the climax of everything I have been building toward since this message began. Write it down. Tattoo it on the inside of your chest. Agreement changes first. Then everything else follows. The Israelites crossed the Red Sea in the dark. Not at sunrise. Not when it was safe. They stepped into that water when it was still night, when they could not see the bottom, when every natural instinct screamed to turn back. And the sea parted when their feet moved, not before. When their feet moved, your breakthrough is waiting for the same thing. Not your tears, not your prayers alone, your movement, your agreement, your feet hitting the water. Say it with me. Wherever you are right now, I do not belong to the old season anymore. Say it again like you mean it. Say it like Pharaoh can hear you. I do not belong to the old season anymore. The 2 final sections of this message are going to show you exactly how to know with absolute certainty that your new beginning is real, and then how to seal it spiritually so you never drift back into the old agreements that kept you small. Stay with me. The most important part is still ahead. Let me ask you something that nobody has been brave enough to ask you directly. What if you have been waiting for God to start something that He already started months ago? What if the beginning you've been desperately praying for didn't arrive with thunder and lightning and a sign on your wall, but came quietly, like dawn before sunrise, so gentle you almost missed it? Here is the truth that is going to reframe everything you've been through. God rarely announces a new season. He initiates it. And by the time you recognize it, you're already standing inside it. So let me walk you through the evidence. Because, chosen one, the signs are already on you. Have you noticed that old conversations don't satisfy you anymore? The same gossip, the same complaints, the same small talk that used to fill your evenings, it feels hollow now, like listening to a song you've outgrown. That is not restlessness. That is elevation. Your spirit has moved to a frequency that small things can no longer reach. Have you noticed that chaos no longer feels normal? There was a time when drama, manipulation, and tension in your home felt like just another Tuesday. But now something in you recoils. Something in you says no. That quiet refusal, that is God rewriting your baseline. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Your mind is being renewed right now. Even as you watch this, have you noticed that guilt is losing its grip? For decades, guilt was the leash they used to lead you. You owe us. You're being selfish. After everything we've done for you. But those words don't land the same way anymore, do they? Something in you has started to discern the difference between genuine conviction from God and emotional manipulation from people. That discernment? That is the Holy Spirit doing His job. Have you noticed that your spirit is craving peace, not noise? Not the next family gathering where you have to perform. Not the next phone call where you listen for 2 hours and hang up feeling empty. You want stillness. You want depth. You want God. Psalm 42:1. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. When your soul starts thirsting like that, that is not depression. That is divine hunger. And God does not create hunger He does not intend to satisfy. Now, here is where it gets deeply personal. Have you noticed you are less interested in proving yourself? There was a time you would have fought to be seen, to be heard, to be credited, to be acknowledged. But now something has shifted. You find yourself walking away from arguments you used to win. Not because you are defeated, because you have finally understood something that took years to learn. The people God is sending you to will recognize you without a presentation. Have you noticed you are starting to value clarity over closeness? This one is painful, because it means some relationships, some very long, very familiar relationships, are starting to feel exposed for what they truly are. Not all of them were ever built on love. Some were built on your willingness to carry weight that was never yours to carry. And now that you are setting it down, the relationship is revealing its real foundation. That grief you feel, that is real. Grieve it. But do not mistake grief for error. Isaiah 43:19. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Do you perceive it? Here is what I need you to understand about this season. And I need you to hear this carefully, because the enemy will try to counterfeit everything I am about to say. Not every emotional surge is direction. Not every apology that arrives right now is restoration. Not every open door is a God door. Some doors open because the enemy knows you are about to break free, and he wants to pull you back into the familiar wreckage before you cross over completely. But here is how you know when God is moving. Peace, clarity, consistency, courage, not euphoria, not excitement, not even comfort. When God is behind something, it will withstand the morning. It will still feel right after you've slept on it. It will still hold when the emotion fades. The compass is correcting north, slowly, steadily. That is God. And now the truth that I believe with everything in me, God sent you to this message to hear tonight. You were waiting for thunder. You were watching the horizon for some dramatic sign, a dream, a vision, an angel at the foot of your bed, a burning bush beside the highway. And because the thunder never came, you assumed the season hadn't started. But many of you right now, in this moment, are already in the new beginning, because God began it in your spirit before He revealed it in your surroundings. The green shoot does not wait to be seen before it grows. It pushes through frozen ground in the dark, long before anyone notices. You are that shoot. You have been growing in the dark, and the world, and maybe even you yourself, had no idea. So here is your question, chosen one. Not a gentle question, a confronting one. What would change in how you carry yourself tomorrow morning if you accepted right now that the new beginning is not coming, it has already arrived? If you can feel the shift already happening in you, type right now, it has already begun. Because what comes next in this message is going to show you the one thing, the one requirement that will determine whether this beginning fulfills everything God designed it for, or quietly fades like every other almost moment you've let slip through your hands. Stay with me. You cannot afford to leave now. Let me tell you what just happened to you in this message tonight. Your pain was real. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, nobody applauded, every prayer that felt like it bounced off the ceiling. Every time you loved people who treated your love like a transaction that was real, God never asked you to pretend it wasn't. Your breaking was not pointless. Your wilderness was not empty. Your restlessness was not confusion. And that separation, the one that still aches when it gets quiet, that was not failure. That was God cutting the cord on everything that was feeding off your calling instead of contributing to it. And tonight is not ordinary. So, let me ask you something that needs to be said out loud. How long are you going to stay loyal to a version of yourself that was never truly you? Because right now, fear is whispering that it's too late. Guilt is telling you that you owe something to people who never once asked what you needed. Nostalgia is painting that old prison cell in beautiful colors, making captivity look like comfort. And that voice that says, "Stay small, stay silent, stay safe," that is not the voice of God. That is the voice of everything God is calling you out of tonight. Hear me clearly, the old season no longer owns you. It does not get a vote. It does not get a forwarding address. It does not get to follow you through the door heaven just opened. Isaiah 43:18, 1:9 says it plainly. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. God didn't say, I might do a new thing. He said, I am doing it. Present tense, active, right now. While you are sitting there, you are not losing your life tonight. You are losing the version of it that could never hold your calling. Read that again. Let it go all the way down. Because some of you have been mourning the loss of a life that was actually a cage dressed up as a home. You've been grieving people who were consuming you. You've been holding on to roles that were slowly erasing you. And God, in His mercy, in His fierce and relentless love for you, reached down and loosened your grip, not to punish you, to promote you. Your new beginning starts tonight, because heaven has decided you have wept long enough in rooms you were never meant to stay in. Now walk through this door with me. I commission you tonight into new peace, not the fragile, surface-level peace that requires everyone around you to behave. The deep, unshakable peace of God that makes no sense to anyone watching from the outside. I commission you into a new tribe, people who recognize the gift on your life and steward it, not exploit it. I commission you into a new assignment, one that is perfectly sized for every scar you carry, because your wounds became your wisdom, and your wisdom is your weapon. I commission you into new courage, new obedience, new dignity. You are stepping out of prison clothes tonight, and you are putting on royal garments, not because you earned it, because your Father decided it. Now put your hand over your heart. Stay right here. Do not leave this moment casually. Father God, I stand before you right now on behalf of every chosen one hearing this word. Lord, you know their name. You know the decade of tired they've been carrying. You know every room they cried in alone. You know every dream they quietly buried because someone told them it was too late. Tonight, I ask you to sever completely and permanently every soul tie that has kept them bound to their own diminishment. Cut every cord of guilt that was never theirs to carry. Break every chain of fear that disguised itself as wisdom. Silence every voice that spoke against the destiny you wrote over them before they took their first breath on this earth. Establish the work of this new season with your own hands, Lord. Send them the right people, open the right doors, and give them the supernatural courage to walk through even when it costs them something. Especially then, I declare over them, they are not damaged, they are not forgotten, they are not too late. They are chosen, commissioned, and covered by the God who makes all things new. In Jesus' name, Amen. Now, beloved, this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances line up. Tonight. If this word is for you, type right now, "Tonight I begin again." Then send this to somebody standing at the edge of their new season. One person. You already know who it is. And if you know God is walking you through a real transition, subscribe and stay close. Because the next message is for those learning how to stand in what God has already opened. You came into this message one way, you are leaving it another. Now go, carrying fire,